Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. If you own a home, you've almost certainly faced this classic property owner's dilemma. You've got a project, a repair, or a shiny new upgrade that needs to get done. So do you bring in a highly specialized licensed professional, or do you just call up a handy neighborhood generalist who might save you a little cash? Today we're zooming in on this choice specifically through the lens of plumbing in the state of Illinois. Because, as you're going to see, picking who turns a wrench under your sink isn't just about the quality of the work, it is deeply, deeply tied to legal codes, municipal permits, and ultimately your own financial liability. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture a super relatable scenario. You're just replacing a bathroom sink. On the surface, it looks incredibly straightforward, right? Disconnect a couple of hoses, drop in the new basin, tighten it all up. It's so tempting to just hire a cheaper handyman to save a few bucks. After all, their goal is just to get in there and fix it. But relying purely on good intentions is exactly how homeowners accidentally step right into a legal and financial trap.
To make sure you don't fall into that trap, here is our roadmap for today. 1. Plumber or handyman. 2. The permit problem. 3. The cost of unlicensed work. 4. The homeowner protection checklist. And finally 5. Fixing past mistakes. Let's get right to it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, Plumber or Handyman, Understanding the Legal Boundaries.
So, before we can even decide who to hire, we really have to define the work itself. What legally constitutes plumbing work in Illinois? Well, the state defines it as installing, repairing, or replacing components that are connected to a building's overarching plumbing system. We are talking about supply lines, drains, vents, water heaters, and fixtures. It's a really broad, very strict regulatory umbrella. Even seemingly simple jobs are technically touching that complex, interconnected system that keeps water safely flowing in and out of your house.
And this comparison brilliantly illustrates the dividing line. What is a handyman actually legally equipped to handle? Non-regulated tasks, things like minor carpentry, repairing the drywall behind your sink, or painting the trim around a fixture. But the absolute second that work transitions into altering piping, messing with drains and vents, or physically connecting to the water supply lines, boom. That completely crosses the boundary into regulated plumbing, and that absolutely requires a licensed pro. No exceptions.
Moving on to Section 2, the permit problem. When do you actually need one?
So, when exactly do local jurisdictions step in and demand a permit? Here are the most common triggers. Replacing major equipment, like a water heater, adding or completely relocating fixtures, or making fundamental changes to your supply or drainage pipes. When any of these actions happen, the jurisdiction doesn't just want a permit fee. They actively expect and legally require that the contractor performing this regulated scope of work meets strict licensing and documentation standards.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the timing of it all. Inspections don't just happen at the end when the house is pretty and finished. They frequently happen during the rough-in phase, which is when all the pipes are exposed inside the walls, and then again before the final sign-off. Why does this matter? Well, because trying to sneak an unpermitted project past the city usually means you'll be forced to literally take a sledgehammer to your beautiful, freshly painted walls just so an inspector can peek at the pipes inside. Yikes.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cost of unlicensed work. Let's talk about the real risks.
I want to read this direct quote from our source material because it carries incredible weight. It says, "Unlicensed plumbing work can lead to inspection failures, forced rework, denial of permits, or disputes about who is responsible for correcting defective work." Really think about that. You might hire an unlicensed handyman just to save a few $100, but if the work fails code, you are now paying for that initial bad job, paying a crew to tear it out, and then paying a massive premium for a licensed plumber to fix the whole shebang from scratch. It spirals into a financial and legal nightmare so fast. And please, do not fall for the illusion of simplicity. Even super basic tasks like swapping out an old toilet or replacing a vanity sink can completely trigger municipal violations if handled by an unlicensed worker. A homeowner's good intentions, just wanting to maintain your property, do not excuse you from facing additional costs, massive timeline disruptions, and some pretty severe municipal fines.
Okay, time for some solutions. Section 4, the Homeowner Protection Checklist. This is your blueprint for safety.
Before you let anyone start turning off your water mains, you need to run through this crucial, highly actionable 5-step checklist. Step 1, define the exact scope of the components being modified. Step 2, ask point blank about their plumbing license for the regulated portions of the job. Step 3, ask if the city requires a permit for this specific task. Step 4, confirm exactly how and when inspection milestones will be handled. And finally, Step 5, get it all in writing. Ensure your contract explicitly states who is responsible for pulling the permits and ensuring code compliance.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this: your personal legal and financial liability isn't static. Your legal exposure shifts entirely based on who is performing this regulated work and whether that official permit process was respected. By actually following this checklist, you are actively shifting the burden of compliance right off your shoulders and onto the licensed professional, exactly where it belongs.
And our final section, Section 5, Fixing Past Mistakes. Let's look at course correction.
Look, if you're watching this and realizing you've already hired a handyman for regulated plumbing work, the absolute worst thing you can do is cross your fingers and play wait and see. Hiding the problem only compounds the potential penalties down the road. The safest, smartest next step you can take is to proactively address compliance. Reach out and initiate contact with your local building department to find out exactly what documentation is needed to make things right.
Here is what your path to making things right usually looks like. First, as we said, make that call to the local building department. Next, you are going to need to hire an actual licensed plumber to come in, evaluate the handyman's work, and correct any dangerous deficiencies. Finally, you may need to obtain retroactive permits. But be warned, some municipalities really play hardball. They might enforce strict retroactive fees or, in worst-case scenarios, demand that the unpermitted work be completely torn out and redone from scratch.
Now, as we wrap things up today, I have to give a quick but very necessary disclaimer. Everything we've covered in this explainer is general guidance derived from our source material, not strict legal advice. Enforcement postures, building codes, and leniency vary wildly from city to city and county to county across Illinois. So for the absolute most accurate answers regarding your specific project, always consult your city building department and the relevant licensing authorities.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to help you evaluate your own home. Think about the projects you have planned, or maybe even the ones you just finished up. Is your home's plumbing truly safe, totally code compliant, and 100% protected from legal and financial risk? It definitely pays to know the rules before the water starts flowing. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.